Welcome everybody to another episode of Catholic Cocktails. This is a weekly video production from Salt and Light Catholic Radio in Boise. And this is the weekly program where we get together, we raise a glass, we share a toast with some of the famous saints in the Catholic faith, and the drinks and some of the information based on Drinking with the Saints by Michael P. Foley. Special guest, Teresa Zapeta. Usually we kind of hand it over to her midway through the show so she can teach us all about these feast days and these special saints. But today she's actually here and she gets to partake. And it's going to be a great episode, as today we are going to be talking about Saint Gilbert. And apparently we don't have just one, but maybe two dragon slayers in the Catholic faith.
That's right. Most people know about St. George and the dragon, but we have a St. Gilbert and the dragon.
Because we have such a dragon infestation in the church that we need not one but two saints to clean up the dragon problem. So today the cocktail that we're going to celebrate with is the Scotch Bishop. And our bartender will walk us through that process in just a little bit. But first, we're going to find a nice cozy corner for Teresa to tell you all about St. Gilbert.
On April 1st, we lift a glass to St. Gilbert of Moravia, also known as St. Gilbert of Caithness or St. Gilbert of Dornoch. He was born in 1158 to a noble, wealthy Scottish family. He answered a call to the priesthood and served 20 years as archdeacon when in 1222 King Alexander appointed him Archbishop of Caithness. I can imagine that this appointment met with apprehension on Gilbert's part, since the two previous archbishops had met with bad end. Adam of Melrose was burned alive by an angry mob of farmers who were protesting the doubling of an ecclesiastical tax on agricultural products. His predecessor lost his eyes, tongue, and a hand because he resisted an increase in taxation. So you can imagine that Gilbert was a little bit worried about taking on this. The seat of his diocese was moved to Dornoch, and the thought is that it was perhaps done so for his protection, since he would be living closer to the king. Gilbert, with his own resources, built the cathedral at Dornoch, and his body was buried there and his relics remained there and were honored there up until the Protestant Reformation. During his episcopacy, Gilbert was able to do a great deal for establishing religion, law, and order in his diocese. He also built hospices for the poor. You'll be relieved to know that he died of natural causes on April 1st, 1245. But what he's most remembered for is a rather interesting or perhaps entertaining tale that he slayed a dragon. Back in ancient times, the northernmost part of the ancient Caledonian forest was burned. And folklore said that was done by a winged creature who breathed out fire, destroying the forest. They say when the dragon spied the spire of the Cathedral of Dornoch, he was intent on destroying the town of Dornoch as well. And as the story goes, the good bishop met the dragon carrying a bow and arrow, and with one arrow through the heart, he killed the beast. So, either the story is that the good bishop defeated evil and the devil, or the good bishop, through his prayers, stopped the progression of the fire from destroying door knock, or that there was really a dragon or a salamander who was out there and needed to be slayed. While you mull this over and form your own opinion, drink the cocktail, the Scotch Bishop, who, as Undiscovered Scotland website describes as one of the noblest and wisest ecclesiastics the medieval church has produced.
As we do each and every week, we film Catholic cocktails inside the beautiful Harp Irish Pub and Eatery in Meridian, Idaho, which is just outside the Boise city limits. If you've never visited the City of Trees, we would invite you to do so. And if you do, make sure you stop by and have a drink at the bar and eat some of their delicious Irish fare. Behind the bar, once again, we have the lovely Sarah, and she's going to walk us through the Scotch Bishop. So as far as equipment goes, we just need the cocktail glass and your shaker full of ice. But you've got quite the variety lined up here.
Yes,
what are we doing?
We got all types of good stuff in here. So we're starting out with 1.5 ounces of our Scotch, a half ounce of vermouth, a 1/4 ounce of any orange liqueur. Today we're using Grangala, half ounce of orange juice, and we do not have powdered sugar, so we're replacing it with an egg white with a little bit of sugar in it to help give it that texture.
Interesting. So shaking a raw egg into a drink isn't going to give us salmonella?
It's not. Yeah. The alcohol helps kind of like kill those germs and
Well,
stuff,
you're the trained professional, Sarah,
Yes.
so I'm going to take your word for it. But again, this is the thing that we want to point out, that there are a lot of variations on these different drinks. So if you've got a recipe that you like or you want to try something different, leave something in the comments that maybe your recipe might be better than what's in the book. So we'll try the egg white and we'll see how this works out. I'm going to step back. We'll watch Sarah in action. Here comes the Scotch Bishop.
All right, we're going to start off with our 1.5 ounces of Scotch, followed with a half ounce of vermouth, 1/4 ounce of Grangala, half ounce of orange juice, and our egg whites. Going a little tight. There we go. And we're going to garnish with a little lemon peel. That is the Scotch Bishop.
And we're back, and it's the exciting part of the program where we get to try what we're talking about. And I'm a little nervous about what's floating on top. So ladies first, Teresa, dive right in to the Scotch Bishop.
Full disclosure, I do not like Scotch.
Okay.
I never thought Scotch was put in a cocktail so as not to ruin the other ingredients. So I may not be the best judge.
Okay.
But St. Gilbert, here we go. I'm okay with not having a second sip.
Because Scotch is pretty strong. I mean, why don't you like it?
Smoky. It's just, it's just kind of smoky.
I think there was enough orange in there. Oh, there's the Scotch. Okay. Or that might have been the vermouth. That's what probably puckered my pickle there. So
It has a light flavor.
yeah.
It seems very light, and then it's that smokiness.
Right. And again, we did have to alternate the recipe a little bit, so maybe the powdered sugar would add some sweetness to cut that Scotch. But again, variations, if you've got some different takes on this recipe, leave a comment down below and we can maybe try out your version. So this is Last Call. It's the part of the show where we give you some fun facts and our final thoughts about the saint that we're talking about today, which again is St. Gilbert. And you were talking about how he was the last Scottish bishop to be recognized as a saint.
Scottish saint.
The last Scottish saint.
No qualifier. Scottish saint.
Period.
Period.
So the Scots need to step up their game.
Yep. up their game. We need some more Scots, so we can come up with a better cocktail.
So why back then did the church need so much reform, especially in that area, I suppose? Was it because of the background being maybe more pagan and they had to really overcome, because that was pretty deep rooted in their culture?
I'm not sure what you mean by more reform.
Well, just the church, the reform that had to happen within the diocese. So where people...
You mean because of his two predecessors being brutally killed? You know, I think what it was that nobody likes taxes, bottom line. And, you know, these poor bishops, one imposes a tax, the other one didn't impose the tax. There was no winning.
Right.
And
so this is more about tax reform than church reform.
I think maybe, you know, because politics and the church life were very intermixed.
Right.
The very fact that it was the King of Scotland who appointed the Archbishop shows you just how much the political world was enmeshed in the ecclesiastical world. Mm-hmm. So either taxes never came up, were not an issue with St. Gilbert, or he was just quite the statesman. And you know, he was very, very well respected, and even to this day, as I mentioned on the Undiscovered Scotland website, they have such accolades about him, is that he truly knew how to run a diocese and pastor his flock.
Yeah. So the dragon has always been one of those creatures that has fascinated me, because I caught salamanders as a kid. We would find them hiding in empty tires and stuff like that, or wherever it was wet, we'd find salamanders and keep them as pets. But then you see so much artistry throughout the centuries. You know, it's like, how did people know what to draw? How did they know what a dragon looked like if they never existed?
Well, it's imagination.
Okay.
Imagination. And, you know, they could have, like, I'm sure when they talked about St. Gilbert slaying a salamander.
Dragon or a salamander.
Or dragon. I don't think they thought of some little one that a housewife can easily swat.
Right.
But I think they took that and then they just amplified it into a big, scary creature. And, you know, lizards and things like that, I think they just exaggerated them. And that's what sparked their imagination to create these fictitious characters.
So sort of like an ancient fish story where I caught one that was that big.
Yeah. They thought of something as scary as they could think of and just made it bigger.
Made it bigger.
And who's salamanders are quite slimy.
Now, you were sharing with me earlier about how Tolkien might have been influenced by the story of the dragon, so Smaug might have been birthed out of this story.
Because, you know, as I mentioned, that normally, at least in Scottish tradition, dragons weren't depicted the way we often think of them. So
more like the Loch Ness monster living in the lakes.
Correct, and that's where the salamander kind of comes in. Whereas this dragon that St. Gilbert slew, and probably this natural event of this fire, it was something out of the ordinary. It was the exception to the normal perception of it. And so that's why they think Tolkien, who of course was Catholic, who would have been familiar with St. Gilbert, saw this story, and he then created the dragon for The Hobbit, which is of course the fiery, menacing evil. They always depicted evil.
Interesting. Well, was it a salamander? Was it a dragon? You decide.
And who knows what you're going to decide after drinking some more of that.
We would like to know what you think of this. So we want to thank once again the fine staff here at the Harp Irish Pub for once again hosting us, being gracious hosts, and we just appreciate them. And we want to thank you for watching. So if you enjoyed the episode, give us a thumbs up. Leave your comments down below. Make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss any of the future episodes. Now, next week, we were going to be talking about St. Leo the Great during our next Holy Happy Hour. And of course, what perfect drink to go with St. Leo than the White Lion?
So it's going to have to be great.
It will, because he's St. Leo the Great. So it better be. Better than the Scotch Bishop. Well, until then, St. Gilbert,
Pray for
us. Cheers.